What happens when a surgeon who spent decades inside some of medicine's highest stakes moments begins asking a different question? Not how do we cut better, but how do we help the body heal smarter? Dr. Jeff Gross has built his career at that edge. He's a spine fellowship trained neurological surgeon, founder of Recelebrate, and a physician scientist working at the intersection of regenerative medicine, longevity, and performance. His path began with biochemistry at UC Berkeley, continued through medical training at George Washington University, and evolved into research and clinical work that's been cited thousands of times. Along the way, he moved from traditional surgery toward a more provocative idea that the future of medicine may be less about intervention and more about activating the body's own intelligence. What makes Jeff compelling is not just the credentials, it's the deeper tension underneath them. Here's someone trained in precision, structure, and certainty who chose to step into a field still full of questions, controversy, and possibility. He's become known for helping people think differently about pain, aging, recovery, and what it really means to extend health span and not just lifespan. And in a world obsessed with quick fixes, Jeff's work forces a bigger conversation about biology, belief, risk, and the future of human potential. And before we start the episode, a quick word from our sponsor, Deep Wealth and the Deep Wealth Mastery Program. Here's Sanjay, a graduate of Deep Wealth Mastery, and he says, the investment I made in the Deep Wealth Mastery Program, it's a rounding error compared to the value created today and the future value I'll receive. Or how about William, who says, and I love this, a company that's attractive to sell is also a great one to own. The Deep Wealth Mastery Program gives me the best of both worlds. Now, speaking of growth and adding value, check out what Leon says. He says that the Deep Wealth Mastery Program changed how and who we hire. We've now begun to hire talent today that we never would have hired if it weren't for the program. The talent we're hiring today is helping both increase our growth and profits and our future enterprise value. Man, I love that kind of feedback because it's that kind of feedback that's what gets me out of bed every day. Deep Wealth Mastery System, it's the only system based on a 9-figure deal. That was my deal. And as you know, I said no to a 7-figure offer, created a system that we now call Deep Wealth Mastery. And that's what helped myself and my business partners welcome from a different buyer, a different offer, a 9-figure deal. So if you're interested in growing your profits, preparing for a future liquidity event, whether that's 2 years away or 22 years away, and if you want to optimize your post-exit life, Deep Wealth Mastery is for you. Please email success@deepwealth.com. Again, that's success, SUCCESS, at deepwealth.com. We'll send you all the information about Deep Wealth Mastery, otherwise known as the Scale for Ultimate Sales System. That's where you want to be. You want to be with other successful business owners, entrepreneurs, and founders just like you who are looking to create market disruptions. Whether you're a startup, whether you've been in business for 3 or 4 decades, whether you're manufacturing, whether you're high-tech, SaaS, low-tech, whatever the case may be, come in and network with other business owners, with other businesses just like you, because they all want to lock in their financial freedom and enjoy both success and fulfillment. Again, that's the 90-day Deep Wealth Mastery Program. It has your name on it. All you need to do is take the next step. Please send an email to success@deepwealth.com. Deep Wealth Nation, welcome to another episode of the Deep Wealth Podcast. Well, Deep Wealth Nation, when you woke up this morning and your eyes opened, how did you feel? Did you have brain fog, some aches, some pains? Oh, it hurts to get out of bed. How am I going to get through the day? Or were you bouncing out of the bed? I can't wait for the day to start. Sadly, I suspect it's probably the former more than the latter. And you're asking, okay, if health is my first wealth, what do I do? Where do I go? Where do I begin? Because we're not in a healthcare system, sadly. We're in a sick care system. Stop your search. We've got the incredible guest. We have a doctor in the House of Deep Wealth. You heard the official introduction. That said, Jeff, welcome to the Deep Wealth Podcast. An absolute pleasure to have you with us. There's always a story behind the story, and founder to founder, and someone who's a medical founder, a doctor founder. This is absolutely incredible. So, Jeff, what's your story? What got you from where you were to where you are today?
Thank you for having me from one Jeff to another. Appreciate that. And it's great to be here. It's an honor, actually. I'm here to share my story because I think it'll resonate with many, because I was practicing in the traditional system of healthcare, which we sometimes call sick care because we're reacting to health problems. Even though there's a move for preventative care, it's really just scratching the surface. And my patients came to me. I'm a neurosurgeon, spine surgeon. I was taking care of neck and back pain and disc problems and pinched nerves and all that kind of thing. And my patients came to me and said, "Hey, doc, I tried everything you prescribed. I tried the physical therapy. I tried the injections. I tried the rest. I tried the yoga and the medications, the everything. And I still have back trouble. I still have this. I saw that. Okay, well, I guess the next thing on the menu to talk about is surgery. Now, hold on, doc. I'm not quite that bad. I'm not ready for that. I said, great, because I didn't want to offer it to you. And then they fold their arms and say, what else you got? And I said, well, I don't have a whole lot else to fill that gap. I wish I did. There are so many ideas in there. And they would say, how about this? How about that? How about stem cells? How about stem cells? You hear stem cells enough time, you get bonked on the head with a rubber mallet enough time, you're going to act. So instead of going to the annual spine surgery bow tie wearing nerd fest, I started going to stem cell conferences and said, you know what? I have some undergraduate training from a million years ago in molecular biology, which is the field of stem cells. I wonder what's happened in all these decades. And a lot has happened. And most of that, Jeff, happened in Europe and in Asia. And that's why you heard stories of professional athletes going to Europe to get stem cells in the 1990s and the 2000s and what have you. And why weren't they getting them here? You know, there are a lot of myths, and those myths are promulgated by big pharma, big implant, government about the legality and things like that. And those myths are now busted, and I'm happy to do that with you today if need be. But we can do a lot of things here. There are advanced ways of helping people heal themselves. Your body actually does the work with what we call regenerative medicine to regenerate. And that comes from the stem cell field. It's not all stem cells anymore, but it's stem cell signaling, which is called extracellular vesicles or exosomes, and peptides. These are cell signals to wake up your cells, turn them back into a youthful mode for a while so they can do the job we are calling upon them to do for us to heal and restore. So I wanted to add that as a tool to my practice to fill that gap for people. And guess what? It's all I do now. My niche is really joints and spine and helping people avoid surgeries and helping people avoid joint replacements by using a simple single injection of regenerative biologics. The other things we do are intravenous. We do that for inflamed issues, people with autoimmune, maybe people who just want to slow inflammation, or they've been exposed to a bunch of bad stuff in the environment, food, water, air, microplastics, and people who want to improve performance, which can overlap with your audience because part of your performance is your brain and your capacity and your ability to be resilient and adapt physically to extra hours and stress in building a business. We do a lot of that, and we do it. We have all kinds of now specific offerings and advanced offerings here based in my Las Vegas, Nevada area office. Although most of my patients aren't from Las Vegas. We start out remotely. We can order labs. We can help with body composition changes. We got to keep you healthy. If you're an entrepreneur, if you're a startup, if you're growing a company, you're a Ferrari and you've got to tune that engine. You've got to keep the engine well lubricated, and you've got to keep it humming along at the high RPMs it's humming without damaging. So you've got to stay on top of that. So health is part of that. And that includes the brain, the body, the soul, everything.
Wow, my goodness, so much to peel back on and talk about. But before we do that, Default Nation, this is not medical advice. Anything that we're talking about, and you have these two guys named Jeff, and our parents, Jeff, amazing. They had great choice in first names. But Default Nation, consult with a medical professional before you do anything. These are two Jeffs having a fireside chat, just sharing some personal notes and some observations. So Jeff, what's interesting is you started the conventional route, and no finger pointing, no deference to your traditional doctor. They're doing the best that they can with what they have. You're now on the other side. And so as you look to both sides of the table, if you will, what's the biggest difference when you look at the traditional Western medical system where I go to my doctor? If I'm lucky, I get 7 minutes of the doctor's time for my yearly physical, and out the door I go. What's the biggest issue? And I know it's a loaded question because that could be an episode in and of itself, and I'm asking that as one question of many questions today. But looking back, your own Cliff Notes version, what's the biggest challenge for most traditional doctors today in light of I'm a founder, I don't have a lot of time, I'm going to the doctor, I'm taking what my doctor is saying as
Right.
the gospel, this is just the way that it is. What should I know, founder to founder?
You should now question your doctor. You should bring in your Google or your AI, ChatGPT, Perplexity printout of questions. We need to unravel that. That's part of informed consent. We need you to be an advised consumer, an educated consumer. Hopefully, today we are educating out there. The problem here is the tail wags the dog. The payer system since the mid 80s, the health insurance or sick care insurance payer system is controlling the delivery of care. There's plenty of money in the system. It's just being sucked out by the health insurance companies. For example, United Healthcare takes in more money in a day than they pay out in a year. Think about that. They have a 365 plus X return on their premium dollar. Why? Because in the 80s, that was health insurance was deregulated and it should be more like a public utility. Okay, you can make a 10% margin or something like that. But no, they're making a 365 plus percent margin. That is the problem. And that's why a visit is 12 minutes. Because for doctors to survive when rent is going up and insurance is going up and cost of employees is going up, they have to see 12, 6, 7, 5 patients an hour, whatever it is, just to pay the bills. Plus, they have to hire 2 more people, one to fight with the insurance company to get approvals and one to fight the denials. So it is a rationing by hassle system, and that's the problem.
Wow, so a lot going on there. And again, that could be an entire, not episode, but series in and of itself. My takeaway, though, is hey, as the patient, be informed, be educated, come with questions. And I'm really shaking the tree. Social programming is whoever's in that white coat, respect what they say, do what they say, they know what's best for you. And a lot has changed. And today it sounds like, and you're confirming this, is hey, not so quick. Sure, be respectful, of course. Ask the questions. Don't take it as this is the only way that it is. And so, again, another unfair question. I'll rely on Pareto's law, the 80-20 principle, because everyone is different. We are all unique. And that said, though, when you look at your patient base, your clients that are coming to you, are you seeing some patterns? Yeah, Jeffrey, you know what? 80% of my clients, it's the same 20% of these issues. I call them opportunities, but the same 20% of these issues are coming up again and again. What kind of patterns are you seeing?
Yeah, absolutely. There are a few things you can tweak and get a lot of value. So a few 20% tweaks can get you 80% of your return. And that would be simple. And it would be first and foremost, exercise. So I know you're all busy out there. I'm busy too. Find 30 minutes to exercise, and we can talk about tweaks and hacks on how to do that more effectively. But exercise, it will get you more value out of your brain, out of your body, out of your life, because it's the single best thing you can do for cellular and body adaptability. And adaptability fosters longevity. The better your body and cells can adapt to a changing environment, the longer it will last. So you'll live to be 100 or plus if you exercise in your 60s, 70s, 80s and more. So exercise, and exercise hard. It can be brief, high intensity, heavy lifting or resistance. You don't have to hurt yourself. You can do it strategically. You can be elastic bands at home, but you got to do it. You got to strain those muscles a bit. And you have to do it because those muscles release these small proteins and peptides when they call for help, and it causes them to build. And muscle mass, of course, is associated with longevity, and it stimulates bone density. And there are other components that support that. That would be part of that 80-20 analysis, simple things you can do like hormone optimization. I know you've talked before to others about that. You have to maintain a youthful hormone profile. And then there are tweaks and hacks with types of things we do, regenerative medicine, peptides, diet management, sleep. If you're not sleeping because you're a busy entrepreneur, extra and more restorative sleep can actually get you more out of what you're doing during the day.
Absolutely love what's there. In Deep Old Nation, you heard the doctor say, okay, exercise, watch what you eat, sleep. Well, it's all mainly free, very accessible. It's nothing fancy. It's not time consuming. You're doing it anyways. But I want to circle back to something that it's easy to miss. It's so important though. You talked about health span versus lifespan. So for Deep Old Nation, can you explain the difference to them?
Sure, absolutely. So your grandmother might live to be 102. God bless her. That was amazing. She lived a great old life, but the last 20 years she was in a nursing home. Well, that's no fun. That's longevity, how long you live on the calendar. Healthspan is filling those years with a healthy, independent life, quality of life. So Healthspan means you are independent and functional and enjoying yourself and your family and your friends and whatever you enjoy in those years. So it's a healthy longevity. It's a measurable type of longevity.
And so, Dear Health Nation, if you want to think about it, we all know what the bell curve looks like. Unfortunately, that's most people's lives. We have that steep curve up, and you're at the top for a very short bit, and then boom, it's a big decline down. We don't want that. We want to round out, we want to square out the curve so it's almost like a big rectangle. You're going up, and then you're at the top, you're cruising along, and for me, we're old, we're gray, well-lived life. We go to sleep, we don't wake up at a ripe old age of whatever that is with a terrific quality of life. So I absolutely love that. So let's talk now about your secret sauce in terms of what you're doing. Most people have heard of stem cells. I suspect, though, that for most in Deep Health Nation, yeah, I've heard of stem cells. I've seen it in the headlines in the newspapers. Wow, does it sound complicated? Does it sound expensive? I don't know if that's going to be for me. What would you want us to know?
Great. So this is where we can dispel some of the myths. Thank you for that opening. So first and foremost, you don't have to leave the country to get stem cells or stem cell related biologic medicine. And it's here in the US. Why don't you hear much about it? Because we are not authorized or approved to advertise it. You cannot advertise online. You cannot advertise on Facebook. On Instagram, you get shut down. So you cannot advertise. And we certainly can't make any claims that we're curing or treating a disease or condition, even if we are doing that. Why? Because the phrase FDA approved, which is a vague and misused phrase, only applies to marketing claims. It does not apply in any form to what a physician or clinician can or can't do or what a patient can or can't have. People don't understand that. And most of what we do as doctors is not FDA approved for marketing. For example, if you're dehydrated and you come into the hospital dehydrated, they're going to give you IV fluids. That's not approved by the FDA. If you're low on vitamin D and we give you vitamin D replacement in a capsule every day, that's not FDA approved. But you don't hear about that stuff. All you hear about is the things that big pharma wants to suppress because they can't monetize it. So be a suspicious consumer, bring questions to your doctor. Let's say you have a bad knee, and that's going to be, our great example here. You have degeneration of the knee, what's called osteoarthritis, or some doctors dummy it down to the word arthritis, or some even call it, when you lose enough cartilage, they call it bone on bone. It's all the same process. It's an early sign of inflammation in the body. And when you have that and your orthopedist takes an x-ray and says, well, you're bone on bone, we better replace that knee, that's an option for you. But there are other options. A single injection. And this is well demonstrated in European literature. And that's what we do here. We do a lot of joints and spine. We can help people with that. So that's another thing. The cost of that is actually not bad. Why? Because we are now using not the stem cells, we're using stem cell signaling. So stem cells, it turns out, Jeff, don't do the work. They deliver the work. They are the delivery mechanism for small vesicles and proteins. And these small vesicles are called exosomes, if you've heard that word. If you haven't, now you have. And these deliver a message to our cells. Our cells take it in, they get reinvigorated in a youthful way. So if you're 12 and you tweak your knee and you tear your cartilage, you're probably going to heal it. You're going to be fine in a few weeks. Mom may not even take you to the doctor. But when you're 62 and you tweak your knee, you go in, oh, you got a tear, we need to do surgery. You may not need to. And that's where I come in. I want to give people a second opinion, alternative opinion on how we look at that, because there are options to try short of surgery, because surgery is many thousands of dollars. And these injections are within $10,000 or $12,000, depending on how many doses. It could go more, but it's no downtime. You can go right back to the gym the next day. There's no recovery. There's no physical therapy you need to do. You can. So in the long run, there's no missed work and all that. The overall cost is much less than if you needed a surgery, particularly a surgical replacement or reconstruction, which is a big deal with risks and pain and missed work and all that. So that's where we are fitting in now. And that's most of what we're doing, is helping people with those issues who want to avoid surgery.
And Default Nation, again, as we're talking about this, I want you to think about this because Dr. Jeff is coming from not just some guy off the street. We're talking about formal education here, UC Berkeley, and then the medical training at George Washington University. Two small institutions you probably never heard of, but some huge institutions out there, very well respected, went the traditional route and now is looking at the stem cells, the exosomes, the regenerative medicine. By the way, I love what you've done in terms of your company name, Recelebrate, Recell, Ebrate, a nice play on words there. So
Thank you.
talk to us about some of the science behind it in a way that we can understand. So we're being,
Yeah.
instead of going under the knife, we have perhaps
Yep.
an injection or an IV
Yep.
or some other kinds
Yep.
of things going on. What's really going on at the biological level, at the body level?
Let's stay with the joint pain, the joint degeneration example, because it's ubiquitous. Many, many people have this at some point. So the science is in France, University of Paris East. There's a well-known orthopedic surgeon by the name of Philippe Herngou. And when I was getting into this field to add it for my patients, before I knew it would take over my practice, I looked for the best practices and protocols. And he had published in 2021 15-year follow-up data. So that means they were doing this in 2006. Okay. That's how behind we are. In their 15-year follow-up data, they did a really neat study. They took patients who had both knees were really bad. These were patients who were recommended knee replacements on both sides. They were that bad. And they said, okay, folks, I know you need a knee replacement, but would you like to join our stem cell study? And of course, they found a number of patients, I think it was just under 100 patients, that said yes. Of course, in France, they say oui. They had all these people join their study. And in one knee, they injected stem cells into the cartilage layer called the meniscus. And in the other knee, they injected them into the bone edge. And this will become clear why in a minute. And they tracked these every 5 years and reported on them. Early, they all did well and were able to avoid the surgery. But as time progressed over those 15 years, it was clear that the bone injected group, over 82%, were still doing great, functional, no or very little pain, and able to avoid the surgery that they were once offered 15 years earlier. But the cartilage injected group, the joint injected group, only 20-some% lasted. They proved that the cartilage factory is in the bone, and we know that the cartilage making cells that made that joint when you were a baby or you were a fetus live in the bone edge and what we call the growth plate. And they get inflamed early, and we get exposed to so many things that inflame us. And aging is this accumulation of inflammation. So the edges of joints are sort of like the fingertips. They get it first. They get the least blood flow. And they get cranky first. And that's why those cells aren't working. Well, if you inject them with regenerative biologics, and then we're using a few improvement enhancement tweaks on the French paper, we use the exosomes, and there's some advantages there, both in cost and in how they distribute without taking away from the result. And we target based on a very specific type of MRI that we have to order because it's off the secret menu. We are having at least as good results. I haven't been doing it 15 years yet, but in the short run, single injection, you go to the gym the next day. We're getting busier and busier with this. And our results are at least mimicking their results at year 6, year 7.
And while you're talking about that again, I want to circle back for the benefit of Default Nation. Okay, sure, Jeff squared, both of you sound like great guys and some great stories here. I don't really hear a lot of this, or my doctor isn't talking about this. If it's that good, why aren't I hearing about that? And again, not to go down the conspiracy rabbit hole and big pharma and everything else, but practically speaking, what you've seen on both sides. I mean, what's really going on with big pharma that we don't see as a typical consumer
Yeah.
at the front end that the medical establishment is seeing, and behind the scenes, what would you want us to know to really open our eyes?
It's a great question. And I look back at my own training and practice. So, I did medical school in the 90s and I did my training in the 90s. And when I came out of training in 1999 and I started my spine practice, my neurosurgical spine practice, I did for many years what I learned to do in the 90s. And what I learned to do in the 90s from my professors who learned it in the 70s and the 60s. And I look back even to the last time I went to a spine meeting a couple of years ago, they had no education on regenerative or stem cell medicine. Nothing has changed. In the spine world, nothing has changed. Yes, there's a new widget. There's a new thing to put in, a new metallic implant, but it's the same thing, right? We're still doing either an opening or a fusion of the spine. It's the two same things. There's nothing new happening for decades. Medicine is actually progressing very slowly on purpose. And it's this apprentice-based training. Even though we go and do continuing education hours, these new biologic, cutting-edge health and wellness options aren't there. Why? They're not monetizable by insurance companies, by big pharma, by big implant companies. And these companies, they're great companies, they do good things, but they also hold back medicine. That's why you go see your orthopedic doctor and you say, hey, what about stem cell options, doc? You have a duty to tell me all the options for my knee, right? You can do surgery, you could do a replacement, you could do a cleanup surgery, you can do a cortisone injection, you can do some lubricant injection, I could do physical therapy, I can take pain pills. What about stem cells, doc? And if they say, oh, that's a great thing, I've got some options for you, or hey, I don't do it, but my colleague does, that's reasonable. But if they say, oh, it's illegal or not proven yet, they're talking as if they were trained years ago by people who were trained years prior to that. The blinders are on, the Kool-Aid is thick, and they can't put it down. Thank goodness I was able to put it down.
Wow, so much going on behind the scenes. It truly is, instead of buyer beware, patient beware in terms of what you're seeing and what's going on out there. And as I like to say, one is never a choice. Two is a dilemma. It's only when you have three or more choices that's truly having some options out there, particularly to our sovereign wealth. It's our sovereign health. And People Nation, you heard it from the doctor himself. Beware. Ask the questions, look around, do your own research.
Yes.
Don't outsource your health to strangers who have 12 minutes of the time to give to you. It'd be like going to some business advisor. Okay, here's my business. Give me 12 minutes of your time. Tell me how I did and what I should be doing for an even better year. Not going to happen that way. And so let me ask you this. When I come to you as a prospective patient, I have, maybe it's the knee, to use your example, or some other kind of thing. Walk me through your system. What's typically going on? How long would this take? Generally speaking, what does it look like?
No, it's a great question, actually. I can talk about the overview, how we do it. So we meet with people, we get to know their life, their health. What's your health background? What have you done? What medical issues? What surgeries have you had? What have you tried if you have a knee issue, for example? Tell me about your sleep, your exercise, your diet, your nutrition, your supplements, your stress, because we need to mitigate all those things first, because you'll get a way better outcome if we can get you, your body, get the fertilizer in the soil and get you ready for this. So we want to go over that lifestyle, and we want to talk health span and longevity and body composition change and hormones and peptides. And a lot of these things can be done so that if we end up needing to do an exosome injection in your knee, your body is tuned up and ready to rock.
Wow. Okay. And so love how you're, okay, Jeffrey, tell me about your life. What's your lifestyle like? What's going on there? And by the way, while we're talking about that, founder to founder, and speaking to Deep Wealth Nation, we're probably not helping ourselves. Not probably, I know as founders, we don't help ourselves, particularly on the health side. We've drunk too much of the founder Kool-Aid. Like, I'll wear that badge of pride. Hey, who in the room got the least amount of sleep? Let's talk about that, and all kinds of bad habits going on there. But from what you're seeing in your medical practice, what would be the top one or two things as founders that it's hurting us, not helping us, that you'd want us to know about?
I think diet. We are just not eating. And I see a move afoot to remove some of the poisons out of our food chain and improve that. And I was just in Europe recently, and they eat so differently there, and everything is fresh. They don't have a lot of preservatives. Why? People have to walk. You only buy enough groceries of what you can carry back to your place. You have a small refrigerator. It's very fresh and natural, and we need to go back to that. There was a depression here almost 100 years ago where we couldn't feed people. So I understand the motivation of the time was to create a sustainable food source that would last. And this is going to cause things to be more expensive, right? Kellogg's is going to have to take out their preservatives, which means that box of cornflakes sitting on the shelf at the grocery stores can't sit there for 2 years. The expiration date's going to be 6 months. So it's going to change things for us. We're still looking at what electromagnetic fields do to us. We're surrounded right now. You and I are surrounded by lights and screens and cameras and technology and microphones. So who knows what we're getting? And we're learning more about that. And I think we need to get back to nature, getting our bare feet on the ground and grounding. And with stress and with a lot of the acids in the diet and the food, our pH goes down, which means we're more acidic, and that fosters more inflammatory damage. and reactive oxygen species, if you've heard that phrase, and cell damage, cell inflammation, and ages us faster. You want to age slower, you got to get back to nature. You got to respect your sunlight and moonlight and eat when it's light out. Don't eat when it's dark. Don't have screens late at night. Get your bare feet on the ground and get those extra electrons out of your body, just like you would ground a lightning rod to the ground. So we're learning a lot about these very simple things, and a lot of them are tying us back to ancient medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, and Eastern medicine. And now we've got some better understanding of how those things might work, which means we can draw back into them. So we're seeing a resurgence of that.
And you said something that very easy to miss. It's subtle, but it's everything. You said, hey, Jeffrey, inflammation is what causes aging.
Yeah.
And let's now dispel more myths out there for Deep Health Nation. So what exactly do you mean inflammation is what causes aging? You mean what? It's old age? That doesn't cause aging? What's going on here? What is inflammation? Why is it calling aging? And I want to circle back then to stem cells and exosomes, but let's start with inflammation first. So what's going on there?
Listen, our cells age, and as they age, we age. Now, the calendar is what it is when you turn 70. However, you can look at two 70-year-olds and they look very different. One is active and has good skin, fewer wrinkles, more muscle. And one looks like they just need to sit in the rocking chair and rock. And that's all they can do. They look older. And those two 70-year-olds have accumulated some different amounts of cellular junk that we call chronic inflammation. Now, inflammation has a role. If you injure yourself, you do want an acute inflammatory response. That's how your immune system works. But you want to turn it on, then turn it off. And when it doesn't turn off over time, that system gets leaky. And that leaky chronic inflammation is what causes us to age. And people age at different rates, physiologically or biologically. And we have tests for that now, not just looking at someone or measuring their grip strength or how long they can hang from a pull-up bar, which are some measures of that. But we can look at their muscle mass, their bone density. We can look at changes at the cellular level, changes in the bloodstream. There are markers and there are tests you can do. Your regular doctor is not going to order this for you. You have to be a smart consumer. And that is the measure of how much inflammation you have accumulated. And we have things we can do for that now with regenerative medicine. That's where intravenous stem cells or intravenous exosomes and peptides can help reverse and slow and then reverse some of those chronic inflammatory damages and stresses and get your cells aging slower.
Okay, so Deep Health Nation, a lot to think about there. And then let's go back again. We're busting all of these myths. I don't want to put words in your mouth. It's not the stem cells themselves that are doing the quote unquote healing. It's the stem cells releasing the exosomes. And it's almost as though, from what I know about exosomes and having other expert guests on the podcast, it's like the exosomes are the universal language for the body. The body gets these exosomes and it can then have the exosomes, when they're in the right area, to go on and do some of the healing or the fixing that's needed. So what's really going on about that? So we're now getting past the headlines of stem cells and stem cells are dangerous or stem cells are everything and the miracle. What's really going on with the science behind that?
Molecular biology 101 is the cells communicate with their neighbors. And that communication is key because it's like a neighborhood watch, influences what's going on. Hey, we've got an intruder, lock your doors, everybody. Or, hey, there's a bake sale, everyone, please show up at the bake sale, whatever it is. So it's a cell, all cells make these smaller vesicles. They are measured in nanometers. Some people call them nanoparticles or nanomedicine. And then these vesicles are, a little outbubbling of the cell, and they contain messages. Those messages are microRNAs and peptides and proteins from that cell. Another cell takes in that bubble. It adopts the bubble. It delivers the contents at high delivery, at high availability. And that new cell is getting a message from the neighbor. And that message might be, hey, wake up, go back to your original job, stop goofing around, stop being inflamed, and work at the optimal mode. So anti-inflamed mode, you flip the cellular machinery, you change what genes are being called upon. You're not changing the genes, you're just reading the ones we need to read now and making the proteins and the machinery to go from defense mode in inflammation to peacetime mode. So stop making warships, we're going to make refrigerators. And those cells now can behave better. And when we give someone a youthful stem cell or exosome treatment, we are helping to re-signal their cells back into a restorative youthful mode. And our cells do the work. If I gave you stem cells, if you came to my clinic here and I gave you stem cells in your vein, they'd be gone in a couple of days, but the benefits would outlast that by weeks and months, some even permanent. Why? Your cells are doing the work. They just needed to be nudged and reminded.
And so that was actually one of my questions. So when receiving treatment and we're going down this particular path, obviously no guarantee for anybody. Every case it's going to be on a person by person basis. But generally speaking, how long does it typically last? And you mentioned, hey, you can come to my office today and tomorrow you're back to your life and there's no real downtime. So walk us through that. What's going on there?
Yeah. If we do a joint injection procedure, as I was like the French do in the bone, and we do sedate people for that, a little twilight, it does take a good 6 to 12 months to get the type of regenerative benefit. And we do have MRIs a year later showing thickening of the cartilage. So if your orthopedic surgeon says you cannot regenerate cartilage, that's, a 20, 30, 40-year-old idea. Mm-hmm. And it's just time for you to find someone who has new options for you. That's all. No hard feelings. And that was me 10 years ago. I was thinking old school. I needed that wake up. So it's okay if your doctor hasn't done it yet. It's kind of the way medicine works, and you got to find someone on the newer end of it. So if you have an IV, you might feel great the next day, and that could last 3, 6, 12 months, depending on how much inflammation you have, how your personal response is. I do an IV for myself every quarter because I have access to it, and I do it more preventative now. I do it more to support longevity. I've got these great ideas. I want to help a lot of people. I got to stick around a while, right?
And so talk to us about this really as a data point of one. So you're now you're eating what you're baking effectively. And so from your perspective, and again, this is not medical advice, it's simply us sharing some observations here. What have you seen for yourself? What's been going on? You take this intravenous, you're getting some stem cells, some exosomes, and what's that been like that for you?
I get a boost of energy. A couple little aches and pains tend to disappear. I can work out. I can sleep well. I recover well. I wasn't suffering too much. I do have an old low back injury that acts up if I stand too long, and that's more mechanical. But most things, I feel great. I'm 60, and I want to feel great when I'm 80. So I got to keep doing this. And my mother and father, 82 and 86, they come in town and they do it every 6 months. It's a little harder. They fly in and they do it and they feel great. They have energy. They're still independent. And I have other people, I have some sweet octogenarians that come in. They have aches and pains. They do it once a year. And it kind of knocks down all their little chronic inflammatory joint issues. They're not bad enough to need a knee replacement or what have you, where I might do a bone injection in the knee, but they need a little boost everywhere. We've done this. I have a person who has Parkinson's, and he has very shuffling gait. He's very slow to move. He comes in, we actually do a nasal spray, which is a great way to deliver exosomes to the brain. And he leaves here a completely different person. He can walk with speed. He doesn't shuffle, and we watch him change right in front of us. So it's been amazing. We do some cosmetic things. We've done breathing treatments for people that have become oxygen dependent. We've helped people avoid dialysis with the IV because it helps the organs, and mostly people with inflammatory issues. So we have a lot of different data points to draw from. You're right. Not everyone gets the same result, and we have to use different doses on different people, and we try different things. And again, we want to make sure they're all ready to go in all the other areas of their health first. So if they're going to invest in themselves this way, if they're going to invest in their own wealth, because this is an investment, that they get the most out of, they get the return on that investment.
In other words, it's not like I can go to the gym, I can put in the workouts, and I go home and I have donuts and ice cream and French fries all day long. It's got to be an entire system. I'm looking after my sleep. I'm exercising. I'm eating properly. And then you can come in and doing what you're doing. And really, it all sounds very non-invasive, from an intravenous to perhaps a nasal spray to perhaps some injections. And then we're really getting to the root cause of some things that, okay, maybe my body, for any number of reasons on this journey called life, isn't on its own able to heal like it used to. Maybe it's missing some of the key ingredients, if I can use layman's terms on that. But with some of these treatments, it can kickstart things again and give my body the building materials that it needs for that joint or that ache or that pain. Yeah, it's been there for decades. Wow, look at this. It's feeling so much better. Or, hey, it's no longer even there. How am I doing with that?
That's exactly right. It's the whole package. It's everything we do. And there are so many different approaches that are way less invasive than an open surgery. And I used to do those open surgeries, and I still do consult second opinions on people with neck and back and spine problems. But I'm looking for ways to not do surgery on them. I've always been like that, but now I'm even more so.
And so let me ask you this, because founder to founder, you're in a multi-gazillion dollar industry. There's public companies, there's investors, all kinds of stakeholders. You're going against the grain
Yeah.
of profit and growth and all those other things that we do look for in business. So what's that been like for you? How have you felt that kind of pressure, or what are you seeing out there? What's been going
Oh,
on behind the scenes?
I have the personality that I like being the disruptor, being the contrarian. So that actually fits, I think. But the irony here is the people that run these multi-billion dollar companies that are sucking the life out of and health out of the sick care system are the ones that have the money and wherewithal and desire to seek these cutting edge treatments. So they eat at the best restaurant and have the worst food for their guests. It's one of those things. Buyer beware. As you said, patient beware.
Yeah, it's so interesting out there. And Jeff, is there a question, an important question that you and I haven't gone over yet that you want to put out there for Deep Wealth Nation that you'd want them to know about this? Or if it's not a question, maybe an insight or some kind of a theme or a personal observation?
We should mention a safety profile here. We have not had issues with rejection of stem cells or exosomes. We have not had any type of problems. We do not use regular stem cells or exosomes in anyone with an active cancer. And for those people, we have very specific type of biologics. And where this is headed, Jeff, is biologics are becoming more tissue specific. So we have what are called natural killer cell exosomes, which enhance the immune system to help fight diseases and cancer. So we have options for people. I do some cutting edge cancer work with people who are trying to either add to a regular treatment or replace a regular treatment. So they don't want radiation, they don't want chemotherapy, they don't want a bad quality of life, but they want to do something. So we do have some options that we try for people. And some of those have worked and some of them we're still trying to get better at. And I'm always looking to add to that regimen for my cancer patients because, that you get down to the Hippocratic Oath, you want to help people and really people with different cancer diagnoses. That's really where the rubber meets the road and we have to find solutions there.
And what's interesting as you're talking about this, so what I'm hearing, Deep Health Nation, sadly, if you're finding yourself that you or a loved one have cancer on the scene, okay, like anything else, some extra caution is needed, and this may not be applicable to what's going on there. But also, it's interesting. I have a friend who's into health, but not quite into health as perhaps yourself or myself. He said, Jeffrey, have you heard about these scam things called these exosomes? And I thought, okay, wow, if my friend is hearing about this, there must really be a big smear campaign out there with exosomes that he's asking me about this. What's been going on out there with the bad publicity?
There is a lot of scam out there. Exosomes have to meet a certain quality. So we get them from tissue donor services, from mothers having a C-section birth. The mothers have to be healthy. They have to be not drinking, not smoking, not using drugs. They're only allowed one romantic partner, and they cannot have had the COVID vaccine. They donate their amniotic fluid at the time of a healthy baby C-section delivery. That fluid is then put on ice and sent to an FDA registered lab that has to meet all kinds of criteria and paperwork for the FDA and audits, and they come and look at the lab. And the lab then tests it for every known virus, and for endotoxin. They quarantine it for 2 weeks. And only those that meet a certain quality for both the count of exosomes and the protein content for the growth factors in there are allowed to be sold. And those are the ones we purchase. And they come to us on dry ice. I have a minus 30 centigrade freezer here in the office, and we store them. And I know there are people that don't see this show as a video that listen, but I'm wearing my scrubs today because we're doing procedures later. So I'm in my pajamas for this purpose. So we pull them out of the freezer and we use them. So they're basically go from the womb to ice to you, right? And there are scams where, a typical dose, and I might use 2 or 3 doses, up to 5 doses on a knee. Each dose is about 520 billion exosomes. There are people out there doing 25 or 50 billion. That's not going to do anything. In fact, there was a study published once saying, oh, these exosomes aren't doing anything. First of all, they injected the cartilage, not the bone. They did not pay attention to the world literature. And they were only doing like 25 or 50 billion. That's a fraction of what we use. So the scam is usually a bad source, a bad number, just so they can use the word exosome. Those are the scams out there.
It's like anything else, Default Nation, do your due diligence. You're going to sell a company, buy a company. You're going behind the scenes. You're asking the questions. And what we're hearing is, hey, an exosome is not just an exosome. It's how many are in there and where did it come from? What's the quality, the purity of what's going on? And where there's money to be made, of course, there's going to be some actors in there with not the best intentions and they just want to get the money, the highest profit, and it's not your health that's coming first. So again, patient, beware, do your due diligence and look into things. It's some great insights there. But on the positive side, as the glass always half full, there's a lot going on here. There's a lot to be hopeful for. And with that in mind, as we look out 3 years, 5 years, 10 years from now, because this whole area is still relatively new,
Right.
what would you either expect to see or hope to see down the road with this in terms of human health and not just longevity, but health span and how it can benefit us?
Well, I think I can tell you what we are seeing because I am sticking my claws into things coming that might be available elsewhere so I can get it here first for my patients. So we're looking at tissue-specific exosomes, those that help grow hair better, those that, are better for us joint issues because they come from musculoskeletal stem cells or neurological stem cells for the brain. So even they have a better cargo designed for that tissue. We're looking at Muse stem cells, a specific subset of stem cells that are difficult to get. We're looking at more options on the cancer side for the natural killer cell system. Some of those immunotherapies for cancer are very lab intensive, and some of them are right off the shelf. So we're trying to make that simple. And we're looking to source some very difficult to get peptides. And we add all these together and we're finding the right recipe for things. That's what I'm seeing. I think that's going to continue to develop. It's going to support our ability to help fight disease. And as you help fight disease, you live longer. So it's supporting health span.
And so truly getting into your company name to re-celebrate life and health and doing it in ways that are, it's either minimally evasive or not evasive. And we're getting back to our life the next day and having the potential of some remarkable things getting us back to the health the way we always wanted it to be, the way that we were. So I love what's going on there. And with that said, it's actually a perfect segue to begin to wrap things up here. It's a tradition here on the Deep Health Podcast. It's my privilege and honor. Every guest, I ask the same question. It's a fun question. Let me set this up for you. When you think of the movie Back to the Future, you have that magical DeLorean car that will take you to any point in time. So imagine now, Jeff, it's tomorrow morning. You look outside your window. Not only is the DeLorean car curbside, this is the fun part, it's open the door and you're going to hop on in. You're going to go to any point in your life. Perhaps it's Jeff as a young child, a teenager, whatever point in time it would be. What would you tell your younger self in terms of life wisdom or life lessons or, hey, Jeff, do this, but don't do that? What would it sound like?
Look outside the box, further outside the box. Look internationally. What are people doing that are disrupting? Because I wasn't a disruptor. I was trying to practice at the highest level within my training in my field, and I was doing so, but I wasn't innovating or I wasn't tapping into innovation and innovating upon that. I should have been. I wish I were. Whatever you're doing now, other people are doing or are going to do. So continue to morph and develop new ideas, look at what's out there, improve upon them, and don't rest on your heels.
Spoken like a true founder. Hey, look outside the box, be different, disrupt, and absolutely love that. Isn't that what we do as entrepreneurs and founders? That's how we change the world. It makes the world go round. Right. And Jeff, someone in Deep Wealth Nation, they have a question for you. Maybe they even think, yeah, you know what? I want to re-celebrate my life. And there's some issues here that Dr. Jeff and team can help me with. Where would be the best place online to find you?
As you were kind enough to mention, our brand name is Re-Celebrate because we are celebrating the renewal of your cells through these new ways. And that's spelled RECELLEBRATE. And we coined the word, so we pretty much own it on the internet. So if you type in the word Re-Celebrate in your search browser, you will find our website, recelebrate.com. You will find our social media, our LinkedIn, our Facebook, our Pinterest, whatever. That's us. Reach out. There are ways you can reach out and just follow us. There are ways if you want to talk to me. I like to meet new people. So there's an opt-in form you can fill out and say, hey, I've got shoulder pain. I want to talk to the doc, whatever it is. we'll get you set up, and we'd be happy to meet anyone who's heard us here on the Deep Wealth Podcast.
And Deep Wealth Nation, it does not get any easier. Go to the show notes. It's all there. It's a point and click. That said, it's official. Congratulations. This is a wrap. And as we love to say here at Deep Wealth, may you continue to thrive and prosper while you remain healthy and safe. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So there you have it, Deep Wealth Nation. What did you think? So with all that said, and as we wrap it up, I have another question for you. Actually, it's more of a personal favor. Did you find this episode helpful? Have you found other episodes of the Deep Wealth Podcast empowering and a game changer for your journey? And if you said yes, and I really hope you did, I have a small but really meaningful way that you can actually help us out and keep these episodes coming to you. Are you ready for it? The dramatic pause. I'll just wait a moment. Drum roll, please. Subscribe. Please subscribe to the Deep Wealth Podcast on your favorite podcast channel. When you subscribe to the Deep Wealth Podcast, you're saving yourself time. Every episode automatically comes to you. And I want you to know that we meticulously craft every one of our episodes to have impactful strategies, stories, expert insights that are designed to help you grow your profits, increase the value of your business, and yes, even optimize your post-exit life and your life right now, whatever you want that to look like. And every time you subscribe and a fellow entrepreneur subscribe, it's a testament to how together, yes, we are changing the social fabric of society. One business owner at a time, one liquidity event at a time. So don't let the momentum stop here. Subscribe now on your favorite podcast channel. You'll never miss an episode. You'll be the first to hear from the top industry leaders, the innovators, the disruptors that are really changing and shaping the business world. And maybe you're commuting, maybe you're at the gym, maybe you're taking a well-deserved break that we spoke all about on this episode. The Deep Wealth Podcast, it's your reliable source for the next big idea that could literally revolutionize your business. So once again, please hit that subscribe button, stay connected, inspired, and ahead of the curve. And again, your next big breakthrough moment, it might just be one episode away. Maybe it was even this episode. So all that said, thank you so much for listening. And remember, your wealth isn't just about the money in the bank. It's about the depth of your journey and the impact that you're creating. So let's continue this journey together. And from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for listening to this episode. And as we love to say here at Deep Wealth, may you continue to thrive and prosper while you remain healthy and safe. Thank you so much. God bless.